Hello and welcome to Excellence Classes. I'm Rahul Nandavani and today we are going to discuss Consumers Equilibrium Indifference Curve Analysis. Before we begin, I request you to please subscribe this channel and press the bell icon for the latest video updates. As we have discussed the Consumers Equilibrium Utility Analysis in the previous video, so if you didn't watch that video yet, check it out first to clarify the basics of Consumers Equilibrium, approaches to Consumers Equilibrium, and Consumers Equilibrium Utility Analysis, the first approach. In this video, we will discuss about the second approach of Consumers Equilibrium, which is Indifference Curve Analysis. It is also known as the ordinal approach, and there is only two commodity case in this approach. Before jumping on Consumers Equilibrium, we have to understand two basic concepts. First one is indifference set and indifference curve, and the second one is budget set and budget line. Indifference set is a table which represents those combinations of two goods which offers the consumer the same level of satisfaction, so that the consumer is indifferent across all combinations in his indifference set. Next one is indifference curve. Indifference curve is a graphical representation of those combinations of two goods which offers the consumer the same level of satisfaction. Let's take an example to understand indifference set and indifference curve in a better way. Let's assume that a consumer A has 1 unit of apple and 12 units of mango. Now we ask A how many units of mango is he willing to sacrifice for an additional unit of apple so that his level of satisfaction remains unchanged. A agrees to sacrifice 6 units of mango for an additional unit of apple, hence we have two combinations of apple and mango given equal satisfaction to A as follows: 1 unit of apple and 12 units of mango. Similarly, 2 units of apple and 6 units of mango. By asking him similar kinds of questions, we can get various combinations as given in indifference set and indifference curve in these slides. So this was all about indifference set and indifference curve. Now let's understand some of the properties of indifference curve. So the first one is IC slopes downward from left to right. So when a consumer wants to consume an additional unit of good X, he has to sacrifice some units of good Y. That is why IC slopes downward from left to right, which you can see in the curve given in this slide. The next one is IC is convex to the point of origin. Now when a consumer wants to consume an additional unit of good X, he has to sacrifice some units of good Y. In this situation, marginal rate of substitution, which is known as MRS, which can be calculated by loss of good Y divided by gain of good X, will decrease, and due to decreasing MRS, IC is convex to the point of origin. We have understood the concept of MOC in the first chapter, so this concept MRS is just opposite to that concept. The third property is IC, higher the IC as higher level of satisfaction. Higher IC represents higher level of satisfaction because higher IC correspond to higher level of income than lower IC. In this situation, more of both the goods X and Y can be consumed by the consumer on higher IC. As you can see in the diagram given in the slide, on higher IC the consumer can consume more units of both goods X and Y. Another one is IC neither touches nor intersect each other. If IC touch or intersect each other, there will be some common combination of two goods and we do not get logical or rational result, which implies that IC neither touches nor intersect each other. In the definition of indifference curve, we have studied that IC represents those different combination of two goods which offers a consumer same level of satisfaction. So there cannot be a common combination. The last one is IC neither touches X-axis nor Y-axis. As IC analysis considers the consumption of two goods, If IC touches y-axis, it would mean that the consumption of good X is 0. Likewise, if IC touches x-axis, it would mean that the consumption of good Y is 0, which is not possible in the case of IC. This can be represented by the following diagram. Okay, now let's move to our second concept, which is budget set and budget line. Budget set is a tabular representation of those attainable, or we can say affordable, combinations of two goods which a consumer can purchase within his or her limited income at a given market price. The budget set or budget equation can be expressed as P1 into X1 plus P2 into X2 is equals to Y. P1 here is the price of good 1 and P2 here is price of good 2. Similarly, X1 here is the quantity of good 1 and X2 here is the quantity of good 2. Y here is the income of the consumer. Now let's understand this concept with the help of a numerical example. Let's assume that the consumer has a budget of rupees 60 to be spent on good A and good B, and also assume that a price of good A is rupees 2 per unit and price of good 2 is rupees 1 per unit. The budget set will be, at first combination, the consumer can buy 0 units of good A and 60 units of good B. At second combination, the consumer can buy 10 units of good A and 40 units of good B, and so on. So this was all about the budget set. Now the next topic is budget line or price line. Budget line is a graphical representation showing those attainable combinations of two goods which a consumer can purchase within his or her income at a given market price. It is also known as price line because it represents the price ratio between good A and good B. It represents that some units of good B have to be sacrificed for getting an additional unit of good A. This can be represented by the following curve. In the curve, the line BL represents the budget line, which means that the consumer can afford to purchase only those combinations of goods present on this line as well as those present inside portion of this line, like K. The consumer cannot afford to purchase points outside the budget line like H. Okay, now let's move to our next topic, which is shifting of budget line. Budget line shifts forward or rightward without changing in slope when income of consumer increases. Prices are assumed to be constant. On the other hand, budget line shifts to the backward or leftward without changing in slope when consumer's income decreases. Prices are assumed to be constant also in this case. This can be represented by the following diagrams. The budget line shifts to the rightward from AB to A1B1 due to increase in income of the consumer. On the other hand, budget line shifts to the leftward from AB to A2B2 due to decrease in income. Now the next topic is rotation of budget line. Budget line rotates to the right when price of one of the two commodities fall, whereas budget line rotates to the left when price of any one of the two commodities rise, which you can see in the diagrams given in this slide. In figure 13, due to rise in price of good X, budget line rotates from BL to BL1, and due to fall in price of good X, budget line rotates from BL to BL2. In figure 14, due to rise in price of good Y, budget line rotates from LB to LB1 and vice versa. Now we are ready to begin Consumers Equilibrium IC analysis. Consumers Equilibrium IC analysis is a situation in which consumer gets maximum satisfaction by consuming goods and services within his or her income at a given market price. In case of IC analysis, a consumer attains equilibrium when marginal rate of substitution of X and Y is equals to price of good X divided by price of good Y. In short, MRSXY is equals to Px upon Py. Second one is IC is convex to the point of origin. We know that MRSXY can be calculated by loss of good Y divided by gain of good X. So you have to remember this point while writing the MRSXY is equals to Px upon Py. We can understand this concept with the help of a curve given in this slide. Figure 2.12 represents that BA is the budget line and IC1, IC2 and IC3 are indifferences curves. A consumer can buy any combinations of good X and good Y shown on the price line BA and coincide too. Both of these are affordable combinations of goods. He cannot buy any combinations of goods on IC3 because he cannot afford to purchase those combinations due to lack of his or her income. So the consumer will be in equilibrium at point E because here all the conditions of consumer's equilibrium IC analysis are satisfied, which are MRSXY is equals to Px upon Py, which means that the loss of good Y divided by gain of good X is equals to Px divided by Py, and IC is convex to the point of origin. Now what if the MRSXY is not equals to Px upon Py? In that case, there may be two situations. First one is MRSXY can be greater from Px upon Py, or MRSXY can be less than Px divided by Py. Now if MRSXY is greater than Px upon Py, the consumer should move downward to the right along the IC. Downward moving will lead to decrease in MRSXY and IC will become convex to the point of origin, implying that consumer should start consuming more of good X in place of good Y to attain the consumer's equilibrium. On the other hand, if MRSXY is less than Px upon Py, the consumer should move upward to the left along the IC. Convexity of IC ensures that as the consumer moves upward to the left along the IC, MRSXY tends to rise, implying that consumer should start consuming more of good Y in place of good X to attain the consumer's equilibrium. Now the last topic of this chapter is monotonic preferences. When a consumer wants to consume additional units of good X but without sacrificing some units of good Y as it gives him the greater level of satisfaction, it is known as monotonic preferences. In this situation, consumers shift to the higher IC as it is only possible when there is increase in the income of consumer. With the current income, the consumer cannot consume an additional unit of good X without sacrificing some units of good Y. So this was all about the consumer's equilibrium IC analysis. Some of the important questions from this chapter are: explain the consumer's equilibrium with the help of IC analysis, and application based questions on the shifting and rotation of budget line. Practice the application based questions from your textbook and mention your doubts in the comment section if any. Thank you for watching this video.